Story number 1. It was around 10:30 at night. The entire college campus was slowly sinking into silence. During the day, the library was always crowded with students, but now it was almost empty. Only a handful of students had stayed behind, cramming for their upcoming exams. Among them was Sadia, a third-year student. She had spent the whole day studying, yet her mind told her it wasn't enough. She had planned to leave early, but for some strange reason, the pages of her book held her captive. Time seemed to slip away without her realizing it. When she finally looked up at the clock, her heart skipped a beat. It was already 10:30. Most of the tables were empty now, almost everyone had left. But then she noticed, at the far corner of the last row, a boy was still sitting there. His face was hidden in the dim light, but from his posture, it seemed like he was deeply engrossed in reading. Sadia felt a small sense of relief, knowing she wasn't entirely alone. Still, something about not being able to see his face clearly made her uneasy. Minutes passed. The faint sound of wind rattled the library windows. Sadia decided it was time to leave. She started packing her books into her bag when suddenly she froze. A strange sound echoed from under the tables. It was the sharp tear of paper being ripped apart, one sheet after another. At first, she thought the boy in the corner must be tearing pages from his notebook, but when she glanced out of the corner of her eye, she realized there was no notebook on his desk, just a single, old, worn-out book. No pen, no paper. Yet the tearing sound grew louder, sharper, as if pages were being shredded right next to her. Her throat went dry. She turned to look again. The boy sat completely still, head bowed, his hands resting on the desk. He wasn't moving at all. And then, suddenly, the sound stopped. The entire library fell into an eerie silence. Slowly, almost unnaturally, the boy lifted his head. Sadia's blood ran cold. His eyes were not human. They were completely blank, pure white, no pupils, no expression, just an empty, soulless stare. She gasped, stumbling back and pushed her chair away. Her chest tightened as panic rose inside her. She bolted toward the door, yanking at the handle, but it wouldn't budge, locked from the inside. Behind her, heavy footsteps began to echo through the library. Slow, deliberate. Each step reverberated against the walls. Something, or someone, was walking toward her. Sadia had tried to scream, but no sound came out. It was as if her voice had been stolen, her throat bound by an invisible hand. Then, right by her ear, came a chilling whisper. "Did you finish my book?" Her whole body trembled. The voice seemed both close and far away at the same time, genderless, hollow, and cold. The whisper carried with it a breath so icy it burned against her skin. She squeezed her eyes shut and sprinted toward the nearest window. She clawed at the frame, but it wouldn't open. The wood felt as solid as stone, unmovable. Her strength drained away as dread consumed her. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped, right behind her. She felt a cold breath graze the back of her neck. The next morning, when the library was unlocked, staff found something chilling. In the far corner sat Sadia's bag, her notebook, and a pen. On the open page, a single frantic line was scrawled. "I don't want to finish the book." No one ever saw Sadia again, but what disturbed everyone most was the security footage. The cameras showed no one entering or leaving after hours. They showed Sadia, alone, studying, running, and talking to someone who wasn't there. At the corner table where she claimed the boy sat, the cameras revealed nothing but empty space. Story 2.
It was the fall semester of 2017 at Ravenwood University, a private college in Pennsylvania. The campus was surrounded by a thick forest, and though students loved the scenic view, there were always whispers about the abandoned Eastwood dormitory. No one had lived there for almost 30 years. Rumors said a fire broke out in the 1980s, killing several students trapped on the fourth floor. The building was never demolished, just locked up and left to rot. Freshmen often heard upperclassmen daring each other to sneak inside at night. Most laughed it off. But one October night, 4 friends, Michael, Sarah, Jason, and Emily, decided to prove the stories wrong. They waited until after midnight when the campus was quiet. Carrying only flashlights and a phone camera, they slipped through a broken fence behind the library. The air grew colder as they approached the dorm. The dorm loomed in the moonlight, windows shattered, vines crawling up its walls. Inside, the floorboards creaked under their weight. Graffiti covered the walls, but strangely, the words were smeared and unreadable. Emily swore she heard whispers echoing down the hallway, though no one else admitted it. On the 3rd floor, they found old student belongings left behind, suitcases, notebooks, even a pair of burnt shoes. Jason laughed nervously and said, "It's just junk, nothing scary here." But as he spoke, the temperature dropped sharply. Sarah's flashlight flickered, then went out completely. Suddenly, they all heard footsteps above them, heavy, dragging footsteps. But the 4th floor had been sealed since the fire. Michael pointed his flashlight at the ceiling. The plaster was blackened, charred, and then, as if responding to their presence, dust began falling like someone was walking right above. Terrified but curious, they climbed to the 4th floor. The door, which was supposed to be welded shut, hung loosely on its hinges. Inside, the smell of smoke was overpowering. The walls were black, and strange symbols were scratched into the paint. Then came the sound. A faint voice calling, "Help me!" It was a young girl's voice. Emily froze. "Did you guys hear that?" she whispered. The others nodded. Suddenly, from the darkness at the end of the hallway, a figure appeared. A girl in a burnt, torn dress. Her hair was singed, her face half burned. She staggered toward them, reaching out her hand. Michael screamed and dropped his flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, illuminating dozens of faces peeking out of the burned doors. Students, charred, lifeless, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. The group ran, down the hallway, down the stairs, slipping on the decayed wood. Behind them, voices rose in a horrifying chorus. "Stay with us! Don't leave us here!" They didn't stop running until they were back outside the fence. Gasping for air, Sarah swore she felt something grab her wrist on the way out. When she looked, her skin was blistered, like it had been burned. But the next day, when they went back in daylight, the dorm looked untouched. No footprints, no broken door, no sign anyone had entered. And Sarah's burn mark? By morning, it had turned into the shape of a handprint. From that night on, none of them dared to go near Eastwood again. But sometimes, when walking past the forest at night, Emily swore she still heard the girl's voice calling, "Help me!" And every October, new students at Ravenwood whisper about the 4 who went inside Eastwood dormitory and came out changed forever.
Story number 3. In the quiet town of Vermont stood Hollow Creek College, a small liberal arts school with a history older than the town itself. Most of the buildings had been renovated, but the old science hall, built in 1895, still stood untouched. Professors only used the top 2 floors for classes. The basement was locked, off limits to students. Rumor had it that the basement once housed human experiments during the Cold War. Professors dismissed it as urban legend, but everyone agreed no janitor stayed in that building after midnight. One rainy Friday night, 4 sophomores, Ethan, Chloe, Ryan, and Madison, stayed late in the library preparing for midterms. Out of boredom, Ryan joked, "Let's check the old science hall. Maybe we'll find those secret experiments." At first, no one agreed, but curiosity won. Around 1 a.m., they slipped inside the building. The halls smelled of damp paper and rust. Their footsteps echoed unnaturally, as if the walls were listening. They found the basement door chained shut, but Ethan, always the daredevil, forced it open with a screwdriver. A wave of cold air rushed out, thick, damp, almost metallic. The basement smelled like blood and iron. With their flashlights trembling, they went down the steps. Rows of old laboratory tables stood covered in dust. Strange medical tools lay scattered, jars filled with unknown substances floating in cloudy liquid. Chloe muttered, "This isn't just a classroom, this looks like a morgue." On one table lay a notebook, pages yellowed with age. Ryan flipped through it, reading out loud entries dated 1963. The words described tests on unwilling participants, subjects locked in the basement for weeks. The last entry read, "Subject number 14, uncontrollable, locked behind the red door." Madison looked around. What red door? And then they saw it. At the far end of the basement, hidden behind pipes, a rusted iron door painted a faded crimson. The lock was snapped long ago. Against every instinct, Ethan pushed it open. The stench hit them first, rot and mildew. Inside was a small cell, chains dangled from the wall, and in a corner, a shadow moved. At first, they thought it was just darkness playing tricks, but then 2 glowing eyes blinked open. A figure crawled forward, skin pale, stretched thin, bones visible under the surface. Its mouth opened, wide, too wide, as if unhinged. Chloe screamed. The creature lunged, moving impossibly fast on all fours. They slammed the door shut, but its clawed hand shot through the gap, scraping Ethan's arm. Blood poured instantly. Panic took over. They ran, flashlights bouncing, the sound of claws scraping against cement following them. Ryan dropped the notebook in his hurry. Behind them, the creature shrieked, a sound not human, not animal, but something caught between. They barely escaped, shoving the basement door closed and bolting it with the chain. Heart pounding, Ethan checked his arm. The cut was deep, but worse, his skin around the wound had already turned grayish, like it was decaying. The next day, when they tried to report it, no one believed them. Professors insisted the basement hadn't been opened in decades. The janitor even showed them. When the door was unlocked in daylight, the stairs led to nothing but a bricked-up wall. But at night, in their dorms, they could still hear the scratching sound beneath the floor. And Ethan? Within a week, he dropped out suddenly. No one saw him leave. Some say he was taken back to the basement. Others whisper that subject number 15 is now waiting behind the red door for the next curious student to open it.